the good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone, a movie podcast that today is talking about one of the biggest directors working in the film industry right now, one of the biggest names. M. Night Shyamalan has a new film out in theaters this weekend, or this past weekend, Trap, starring Josh Hartnett. And whether you love him or you hate him, the guy knows how to put butts in the theater. It was a big story that the opening weekend for Trap is $15 million, which is insane for an original idea with not really a big star. And today we're going to focus on some of his better films. There is both good ones and bad ones. We're going to choose the ones at the beginning of his filmography and one towards the end. And we're excited to do it. Guys, how was your M. Night Shyamalan binge over the past week?
I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would because of the discourse about M. Night online. Because the only movie actually from M. Night I had seen before was the live action Last Airbender.
That's right.
Yeah. So I had a great time this week.
Have you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Not all of it.
Okay, because my brother's doing the same thing right now. He's binging M. Night Shyamalan. He just got done watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and he's never watched he's watched not Avatar: The Last Airbender. My bad. It's called The Last Airbender, and he's never watched the TV show before. And I feel like that'd be such an interesting perspective to view that movie without actually having seen the series.
Yeah, I don't know if it would make it. I'm assuming it would make it a tiny bit better, but like it's still dog shit. It's still just crazy bad. But
if you care about movies at all, it's just exposition city. That is all that movie is. It's just because it's the toughest thing to do. I mean, even with Netflix trying to fit it into 8 episodes, I believe, it's still a lot of exposition and a lot of stuff that was added that shouldn't have been added and stuff that was taken out that shouldn't have been taken out. It's just a tough thing to do. It really is.
Yeah, I want my brother to watch it because he's a huge fan of the animated show. He even has an Uncle Iroh tattoo.
I got a tattoo of the koi fish from the end of season 1, the moon and the ocean spirit. Yeah, I got it on the back of my arm. But
I have Boba Fett on the back of my arm.
What'd you say?
I said I have Boba Fett on the back of my arm.
Dan, what about yours?
Nothing.
Do you have any tattoos?
No.
I was hoping you had a
How many do you have, Stone?
How many? I don't even know. I probably have 10, 11, 12 tattoos probably.
12?
I only know this because someone asked me on Friday. I have 14.
Damn.
Yeah, I've probably. I don't know. That's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about The Last Airbender either. Luckily, thankfully, we're gonna start out with The Sixth Sense. A film that really put M. Night on the map in an insane way. The guy really hadn't made a name for himself yet, and all of a sudden, The Sixth Sense comes out, and it was nominated for 6 Oscar nominations. 6 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture, Silence of the Lambs, The Exorcist. Oh, my bad. Hold on. Hold on. I was reading the horror films that were nominated for Best Picture. My bad. Nominations: Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Director, Screenplay, and Editing. And the only films that M. Night had really made before this was a small film called Wide Awake, and then his directorial debut, which was Praying with Anger, that I don't think anybody saw. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he just went from, I don't know, a nobody to a somebody, I think is one of the most fascinating stories ever kind of in film. Like this, and it's 1999. This movie came out in 1999, which is possibly the greatest year ever in movies. And for horror, you had this and the Blair Witch Project. It's just, this movie is just one of the most important, influential, and just legendary movies, I think, in movie history.
I would genuinely argue that this is probably the second greatest and most well-known plot twists in cinema history.
I was going to ask you guys that. I looked it up. I looked up what people think is the greatest plot twist.
It's got to be Vader.
What was that?
It's not. This is number 1.
This was number 1. But a lot of people, they had The Game. David Fincher's The Game. Fight Club as well. Empire Strikes Back.
That's what I was thinking it would be.
Yeah, Arrival, and then another one I wrote down is Malignant. And if you ever watched Malignant, that is a good movie. But it's a James Wan horror movie that came out during COVID. Very underrated, but yeah, I think they did have this ranked as the #1 plot twist ever.
Wow.
With Arrival, the twist just being the ending, or
well, I guess the twist of Arrival is the fact that all those flashbacks you think is her past.
it's her saying future? Yeah, the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about plot twist, this is, if you asked 100 people on the street, this is the one they think of. If you ask people about M. Night, this is the movie they talk about. And I think it's the movie that helped get him into some bad habits, because I think he kind of turned his twist into a gimmick and then maybe felt like he had to have it to be at his best, or this had to be part of his shtick. And like, I think it would end up kind of setting him back. And then I think later on in his career, you see him kind of overcorrect and make some stuff without a twist that was like some of his worst movies. Almost as if to say, like, you know, I kind of need it, or maybe I should be having that twist. But it kind of became like synonymous with him. And I honestly feel like this movie sometimes hurt him a little bit more than it helped him, even though it is iconic.
I would say hurt him because we're going to talk about it at the end of the episode, but with Trap, like, even with the idea of Trap, like, I think it's such a good idea, not to dive too much into that movie just yet, but I think the fact that it's so reserved, like, I think it could have been so much more. It's kind of just basic, and I feel like that's something I really like about M. Night. Even his newer movies, like Knock at the Cabin, there is that end of the world element. Even Old, there's something very fascinating there that can put butts in the seats again. But with it's like his most, I think, safe film when it comes to Trap, and that is, I mean, like you said, there is the twist. I do think is a great thing about him and a bad thing about him. I wish there was a twist in Trap where it became more interesting. And in my opinion, it didn't, but unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked about Trap like in my review, and I'm so let down by, and people, like, some people are bitching about this, but like, I don't care. This movie would have been so much better if they just didn't tell us Hartnett was the killer. It's such an obvious thing to say, but it's the truth. If you had gone into this and he was painted in like a sympathetic way, as like a good dad, he was really concerned when he heard the news, and you kind of build up some anxiety and didn't know what was happening, and then maybe there's some people in the crowd, like individuals he notices or people the police notice, and you see their side of it, and they're kind of feeling out like potential suspects. And then you get the twist that it's him. That's a good fucking movie. That's a cool movie. And maybe spend the whole fucking time in the stadium. Like,
Yes.
It's so obvious how to make the movie better, and I just don't understand what they did, because it's just kind of nothing. And like, I feel like if you watch the trailer, like, what's going to happen. It's just like, I don't know. Again, we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
I think that was a huge miss in terms of, like, again, maybe an overcorrection by giving us that twist early. I don't know.
Speaking of knowing twists, this was my first time watching The Sixth Sense, and I'm sad that I knew the twist, because stuff just was so much more obvious. Like, when he shows up to the anniversary dinner and there's no plate, like, obviously, like, if you saw this in theaters at the time, you probably thought like she was just mad at him for being late, that he's showing up right when the bill's already at the table and he just missed dinner, stuff like that. Like, that part made me a little sad, because I was just like, oh, this is obvious.
Yeah, I will say the same thing. I rewatched this movie this past week, but I had watched it before. But still, the very first time I watched it, I knew the twist as well. But even when I mean, it had been such a long time since I watched it this past weekend. And even then, there's still, just besides the dinner scene with his wife, there's so many. I can only imagine sitting in the theater watching this in 1999 and not knowing, because it's a really good twist, because there's the sequences where him and Toni Collette are sitting right next to each other as Haley Joel Osment walks into the walks into the house. And you're assuming that Toni Collette and him were just having a conversation, but they never talked to each other. And in hindsight, they weren't having a conversation. He was just sitting in the chair opposite to her. And it's truly brilliant. But then I think it's really brilliant, honestly. And then, like you said, the dinner scene, like even the chair doesn't move. If you watch very closely, he kind of just hovers in it, like into it in a way. Um, I mean, yes, the twists maybe have ruined him, but I think this appropriately is called the best twist of all time. I think it's really effective as well.
I would agree. And then, like, one of the things I noted, which I probably should have done some research on, but I'll ask you to, is, like the closet that he keeps trying to get into, or maybe it's their basement door, has the red door handle. At one point, you see like red doors. Do you guys know what like that's supposed to be like representing?
Yeah, so I think red is supposed to be the color of anything that ghosts have come into contact with. So there is the scene where Haley Joel Osment is going up the stairs of the birthday party, and he's wearing a red sweater. And also there's the red balloon, also that floats to the top. Another thing is there's so many great scenes in this movie. One is the realization that the daughter that is talking to Haley Joel Osment. I want to know his character's name real quick. That is talking to Cole. Is her mother poisoned her, and at the funeral, the mother is wearing red as well. So it just signifies like people who are interacting with the ghosts in some way. And I know that also Shyamalan made it a point to extract any red that was in the scene that did not drive that narrative home. So you really can't see red in any other sequences besides that.
Okay.
One thing I also caught, I watched a video about this that hammered this point home, or this concept home, was also the fact that when Bruce Willis's Malcolm, when his wife is talking to that man and they're getting really close, and then Bruce Willis throws a stone at the window, she's also wearing red in that moment. So it seems like it's just whenever a ghost is really directed towards a certain person or a certain object.
Okay.
I feel like people like Toni Collette, I don't think gets talked about enough with how good she is. I was reading that I don't know if she was on her way, or like when she auditioned for this, she had originally auditioned for, and this ties back to our previous episode on Nick Cage. She had auditioned for Bringing Out the Dead, and then she was like, I guess I'll audition for this too. But I think she didn't get Bringing Out the Dead and ended up doing this. And it would have been cool to have her in there, but and I'm assuming as the main like love interest woman, but she did a great job here, and I'm glad she ended up getting this. She's a great actor. She's in Mickey 17, which I can't wait for.
I forgot she was in that.
And she got an Oscar nom for this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Best supporting actress. Bruce Willis was the only one who didn't get Oscar nom. But it's funny, just the fact that Bruce Willis is in this movie, and then also the next one we're going to talk about, Unbreakable. M. Night purposely wrote this movie for Bruce Willis. Like, that's who he had in mind. And I think that's really cool and admirable of Bruce Willis just to be in this film. I don't necessarily know the process or the relationship towards one another. But like I said, M. Night wasn't a big director. And Bruce Willis was a star. And the fact that he's like, yeah, I'll be in this movie. I like your script, man. I think I'm glad. I don't think this movie would have worked without him, to be honest. I think he has the right amount of genuineness as well as mystery. And I don't know. He's also goofy in this too when it comes. I love the scene where it's Cole and him are talking, and he says, like, if I tell you, I think if I'm right, you come towards me. And like the mannerisms that he's acting with, like, very much reflect a child psychiatrist. And I just think that he has that charm about him. And also the devastating scenes towards the end. Like, I think he was perfectly cast in this, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce, he's always been one of my favorite actors, like, since the time I was young. I mean, I talked to you guys about how much I liked Armageddon, and, like, I love Harry Stamper. Like, I know. But as a character, like he's just, I've always connected, I feel like, with his characters and just enjoyed them. I feel like he just is a guy it's easy to root for and easy to connect with. I mean, Die Hard is the first rated R movie I ever watched in my life. Love John McClane. Love the Die Hard sequels for the most part. I mean, he's just been in so many good movies and has a lot of range. And like you said, I think getting involved with a small movie like this, a lot of times those movies rely on like being able to get, either if it's a writer who wrote it that was unknown, like getting a big director attached, or just an actor that has a name that will make somebody want to put money behind it. So very cool that he was willing to get involved, and obviously it paid off for his career as well.
What was your first rated R movie, Stone?
Damn. That I watched ever?
Yeah.
So I don't even know. Probably like a horror movie. Probably like the Blair Witch Project, I would say. Fitting for this episode.
Mine was Gladiator.
Solid. Like I said, I've always been so fascinated with marketing, so I feel like that's why ever since I was a kid and I always heard about the Blair Witch Project, I just wanted to watch it so badly.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, Haley Joel Osment, like from 99 to 2003, he had this absolutely insane run. He was in AI. He was in Pay It Forward. And he was in Secondhand Lions, which is an awesome movie that, like,
I grew up watching that movie. I love that movie.
so did
I
I.
don't know that one.
It's Robert Duvall and
Michael Caine.
yes, Michael Caine. It's a very strange movie, but a very 2000s. But I really, really love it. I think it's very, very, very good. I mean, doesn't get talked about that much, but I like it a lot. So he had a really nice run.
I'm also just figuring out he played young Forrest in Forrest Gump. Or I'm sorry, Forrest Jr.
Yeah.
One thing I really like about there's a lot that I like about The Sixth Sense. One thing is that this movie is so good before you know the twist that he sees dead people. And I don't even know if it's necessarily clear that that's what he is wrong with him, why he's so socially awkward. Maybe it is. But I also like that M. Night kind of just goes ham with it after that, like just shows tons of ghosts. And it's just so interesting because this is how a child would act, is burdened with this responsibility of being the person to bring dead to the light. It's just an insane concept to bestow upon a child. And I mean, you said it, Haley Joel Osment is perfect at capturing both the fright, the fearfulness of that, but also he so emotionally wants to, especially towards the end, just help them as much as possible. And that is something I've noticed about all M. Night's movies. He has, and we saw it in Trap, obviously, Dan, but he really does have an emphasis on family, because I think a lot of his movies have child actors in them. Like all the ones we're talking about today do.
Yeah.
And I think that's just another staple of his filmography. I mean, maybe not The Happening. I just thought of After Earth. I mean, that's a child and his dad, the relationship there.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Will Smith wrote that and then went to M. Night with it and like championed for Jaden to get involved. And like, it's very strange because you think M. Night would have learned from that to not bring his daughter into Trap because she was so goddamn awful. And like, it ends up it's like this weird thing where it's, you want to respect it because it is for the kid's career, I guess. But at the same time, if they're not ready, they're not ready. And like, it's on you to also know that. And you just end up doing your kid a disservice when you put them in a situation that they're not prepared for. So you think he would have learned, but he didn't. And God, she was so fucking bad in this movie. And if she gets so much screen time in the second half, it really blew me away that they did that. But it is what it is.
I'll say, what do you think is your favorite scene of this, Connor, of The Sixth Sense? Because this is your first time watching it, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of while you're thinking about it, I'll say mine. I think my favorite scene is when the dad is just staring at the tape. And then because what is actually happening, this is a horror movie. That's what I was reading off at the beginning of this when we started talking about this, was all the horror films that have been nominated for Best Picture. This is one of six. It's The Exorcist, Get Out, Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, Black Swan, and I think that was it. I think I got them all. But it's the fact that that might be the most horrific part of the movie, is you're watching a mother poison their child. And why it's so terrifying is it's not jump scares. It's not even a ghost. Like, there's tons of ghosts in this. There's people hanging in like a school. But it's the fact that something like that is realistic. Like, that can actually happen and probably has happened before. And I think just there's like we see it in Trap, and a lot of M. Night's movies is like he frames these close-ups of the actors while they're just staring into the camera. Either they're emotionally acting or they're speaking lines. And I think this is where that's used perfectly, is it's completely just the dad in the frame, just staring into the camera, as deep and as rich as possible. And this actor, I don't even know the guy's name, but just the terror that just like goes over him is it's perfect. It's so chilling. And like you said, you look over, the girl's wearing red, the mom's wearing red, and especially there's also other people at the, what is that called when you have a funeral and then there's like a party? I don't know.
Visitation.
Sure, visitation. There's like people over his shoulder, like watching it too, which is just insane.
I was between that one, but I think I'm actually going to go with the scene in the car when he tells his mom.
I was hoping you go for that one. I love that scene.
Yeah, that's just a phenomenal scene.
Toni Collette's acting there is just off the charts. It really is. Like, it seems like the most genuine thing maybe I've ever seen in the last couple weeks, man. Like, I haven't seen that good of acting in a long time.
It's kind of funny too that like Toni Collette auditioned for this and Bringing Out the Dead. This is like both in that like fringe of, in between worlds, like between worlds, you know. But just kind of a funny connection.
Yeah, Sixth Sense. I mean, this was. Dan, do you think this is his best movie to date still? Oh, no, you guys both think that The Visit is his best movie, correct?
From what I've seen, that's what I believe is.
Okay.
But I've only seen 6 of his movies.
I know the majority of people think that this is his best movie. And it's very appropriate. It's his most acclaimed film.
Yeah,
so.
It's not a wrong take.
I just think, like, I don't know. I think after the first watch, it just goes down a little bit. Like, that's
how any movie with a twist is.
No, yes. I mean, I agree. And that's one of my issues with him is like, and when the twist is bad, it somehow makes the experience worse because you're just like, oh, I know this dumb shit is coming. But like, I think when you have that as one of your, like, as your gimmick, it hurts rewatchability. And to me, when you hurt rewatchability, like, it hurts a rating for me personally. So I think The Visit's awesome. I think it's a really, really good movie. And I think it's kind of the best balance of everything he does well. So I enjoy it more than any of his other movies. I'll say that. I don't know about best, but
just speaking of the twists of this movie and the fact that you say like it goes down on rewatchability, kind of, I think that's a good transition into our next movie, Unbreakable, because I think a lot of people didn't like this movie a lot when it first came out because they were comparing the ending, because there is a twist to this film. They were comparing the ending to The Sixth Sense. And there was reviews saying that this movie is not as good because it just doesn't meet the expectations of what, or the impact that the twist did in The Sixth Sense. And I think that's just, it's unfortunate that this guy's, calling card is twist and everything. And I think this one is very much appropriate. I just love this movie. I can get into it a bit here, but I want you guys to talk about what you think of Unbreakable first.
I would say I like this movie a lot, simply for the fact that it feels very real. Like, it's not like, any of the MCU projects where like, they get powers and they know how to use every bit of them 10 minutes later. Like this takes the entire movie for him to realize that he has powers, and like also we don't totally know if he does or if he's just truly lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie better than The Sixth Sense. I think it's really, really good. One of the reasons I found Glass to be so disappointing was I thought it was such a cool premise, and when we finally got that movie, it felt like it was like, written on a fucking crayon in an Arby's in 30 minutes to make money, which really frustrated me. But this is really good, and it feels like a little bit of a subversion of expectations in a lot of ways, but Bruce Willis again brings that like believability, that reality, that like everyman feeling to the story. And Samuel L. is like, he's awful, but you do also feel for him, and there is empathy from the performance, which is really important. And it's funny because, there's a lot of conversation about superhero movie villains and what works, what doesn't work. I put that video about me comparing the Marvels to Deadpool on Instagram, and I'm getting fucking hammered on there about that. And part of what I said was there's no villain, because there isn't. And some people like are pissing their pants about that, but like in reality, it's just some NPC. You don't remember her name in a week. You don't remember anything about her. She's just trying to destroy the multiverse. It's the most generic bullshit. And I think that's part of the joke of the movie. I get that, but like the movie doesn't have a villain. There's no real story. There's a thing called like, what's it called? The fucking Time Ripper. Like, get the fuck out of here with that, please. And I get that it's making fun of itself, but this is a villain that you can connect with and feel for, and it makes it stick in your mind. And those are the performances that you actually remember at the end of the day. So I think it's a really good movie.
Imagine if this film, erase Split, erase Glass. Imagine if this film came out in 2024. Imagine if this is what came out this past weekend instead of Trap.
People would lose their minds.
They would think it's the coolest fucking thing ever. They really would. This was
I might disagree with you.
How so? I think why I say that is because people growing superhero fatigue is interesting, because I don't think people are growing superhero fatigue. I think they're tired of the same superhero films, which is why the Joker made money, which is why the Batman made money. It's people. The Deadpool and Wolverine is unique just because it's Deadpool and Wolverine. But when you pull that back, it is a same plot, humor, like Dan said, villain. It's the same thing that we've seen before. And I can't remember, maybe you can, Connor, maybe you can, Dan, a movie in the past 7 or 8 or 9 years that takes this realistic approach, as real as this can be. I don't know. Maybe because superhero genre is obviously huge right now and massive. Maybe I'm missing a film, but the only thing I can think of is Brightburn. But even that is like ridiculous.
God, I hate that movie, dude. I have a video. I have a video in my drafts talking about that, just absolutely ripping that thing to shreds. I hate it. But
so where I would disagree with you is because you mentioned Joker and Batman. Like those are very well established comic book characters that everyone knows and love. I don't think this movie would get the draw. And like Dan said, because there's no true villain, I don't think people would like it as well. I think the only draws to this movie in 2024 would be Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, I think maybe I misheard Dan, or you misheard. I think there is a true villain. I think that's what. Yeah, Samuel Jackson is legit a great villain. He creates the hero.
I misunderstood.
He's literally, the beginning of this movie isn't about Bruce Willis. It is Samuel L. Jackson. If I remember correctly, the beginning of this is an insane. It's, I believe, his mother giving birth to him, and it's an incredibly acted scene of this doctor or whoever this guy is delivering this baby. He's like, "What did you do to this thing?" Like, he was terrified. He's like, did you drop this thing? He's like, no. And then he's like, his arms and his legs are broken. And it's such a fascinating thing because I think in comic books, a lot of times you see this is what I've heard. I don't read comics, but is that the hero is created by the villain. And like Dan said, you don't necessarily hate Samuel L. Jackson. You kind of like the guy. You want David Dunn to be happy. The reason why his marriage is failing, the reason why his relationship with his son isn't the best is because he's not fulfilling what his purpose in his life is. And you are happy that Samuel L. Jackson has come into his life and he seems genuine. Like Samuel Jackson also not only besides that, because he's creating this, everyone wants to get behind David Dunn, everyone wants him to be the hero, but he's also had a horrible life. That scene of him rolling down the stairs, the visualization of his cane breaking is incredible stuff. And when you get to the end of this movie, the twist, right? That he is the one that is causing all these catastrophes. I think the audience is just as hurt as Bruce Willis is. You're like, what the fuck, dude? Like, how can you create this Superman on Earth, but at what cost? It's an incredible villain. It's so good. You feel for him, and you also understand why he did what he did. He has no hope in the world. All he wants to do is find somebody like him. That's all he wants.
Yeah, and it's a very like lonely performance, and a very like, it's just someone you can really pity. But I think it does hit the audience pretty hard, and it is like an effective turn. And this movie, I mean, they've talked about it a lot, but it's very much set up like a comic book in and of itself, with like kind of the 3-part structure, with like the introduction and then finding out the powers and then the confrontation at the end. It's a fun kind of like homage to, comics, and it really, really works for me. I love this movie a lot. And this movie is like, I give M. Night a lot of shit in general. A lot of it, I think, is because I know what he can do. Like, I know how good he can be. And I feel like, but when you think about it, he was doing this 25 years ago. He was making his best stuff. And it's like, what happened? Like, what happened, actually? And how did we get to, like, stuff like Old? And, like, I just don't get it. But it frustrates me, because if he had always been, in my opinion, making poor movies, I wouldn't be as annoyed as I sometimes get, because there's a part of me that has a level of excitement when I go to watch his movies. Like, I still get there to watch his movies every time, and I'm just let down almost every time. So it's frustrating for me.
I have one big complaint about this movie.
Go ahead, my guy.
I don't mean to skip over what you just went on, Dan. That seemed very personal to you.
I mean, I was preaching down here. I don't know.
No. So at the end, when he's, finally saving his first person. Well, I guess he didn't save her. He saved the kids, though. He had just fallen in the pool. We have all had wet shoes at some point in our life, and they are the loudest thing on God's green earth, just squishing up and down. And somehow he sneaks up behind this man to choke him.
I mean, maybe he took his shoes off. That is the nittiest of pickiest.
Oh yeah, it's 100%.
He had shoes on and they're fucking squeaking. Like, come on, dude. Also, he could have been drunk as hell. The guy's like drinking and spitting on the girl, so the guy could have been drunk and not have heard it or something. I don't know.
What happens to you when you drink, Stone?
Like, I don't know. I don't pay attention. The squeaky shoes.
I'm just saying, all you would hear behind you is.
That is.
Oh, it's very nitpicky, but it was all I was thinking about during that entire sequence.
Out of everything, I would not have thought that you would have said, "Yeah, his shoes probably had some water on them."
Not probably. They for sure did.
Maybe he wiped them off on the rug. Maybe he took his shoes off. I don't know. I wish I could go back and after this, I'm gonna go back. Maybe he has his shoes off. Look at that. What a hero.
We asked the hard-hitting questions here, obviously.
But like something you were saying, Dan, like how much this resembles a comic book, something that stood out to me, it should have stood out to me like the very first time I watched this, but on this rewatch, because I've watched this movie many, many times. It's in my top 4 on Letterboxd right now. Like I fucking love this movie. Is the fact that when he is, I think it's a train station, when he is accepting his responsibility and his powers and he spreads open his arms and he's hitting all those people, something that I think is really cool is the fact that every single person that has something horrific in a way about them that stands out to Bruce Willis, their colors are very bright and a different color. Throughout the movie, both Bruce and Samuel Jackson have colors that signify their character.
Green and purple.
Green and purple. And when you look at the train station, every single person has bright red on, bright blue on. The people that he's hitting, everyone else, the colors are absolutely beige, muted. They're besides the people that I remember some guy has a really bright green shirt on, and then obviously the guy at the very end has a orange jumpsuit. It's like the brightest color ever. And I think that just, it's just a cool little comic book detail. Like these are the villains. This is the hero. Who is he going to, chase after? But something I really respected on my rewatches as well. I know I'm ranting here, but I just, like I said, I love this movie. Was I really like one takes a lot, and I think sometimes that can really hurt M Night in his movies. He does it in The Sixth Sense. He does a lot in The Village as well. But there's so many one takes in this film that I find absolutely incredible. And I found out that even the actors themselves, Samuel and Bruce Willis, were a little bit worried that they didn't have enough material. Like he only did a couple takes, and he would like there's a sequence of the two of them talking on top of the stadium, and that's like a super long take of just them conversating. But the one that there's so many I could think of is the opening scene is incredible. It's the camera is in a sense a little child that is watching Bruce Willis interact with this woman, watches him take off his wedding ring, and then she's a reporter, I think a sports reporter. Like that is all one take, and it's brilliant. But the one that I love the most is after the train sequence. He's sitting on the bed talking to a doctor, and in the bottom of the frame is a person breathing under a cloth, and it's entirely one take. And then 50% of the way through that scene, all of a sudden the cloth bleeds through. And the doctor's like, he's like, who else made it? He's like, besides you and this person. Well, he's like, when this person dies, you will be the sole survivor of this film or of this train. And that's just an incredible representation just at the bottom of the screen, just watching someone die. It's just chilling. It really is.
Yeah.
It honestly kind of reminded me a little bit of the opening to Bernie. Like when they're doing like the open heart surgery and kind of in front of the audience. And like that's like the forefront of the screen.
Do you guys both like this better than Sixth Sense?
No.
Yeah. I do.
No,
I do think Bruce Willis is better in this.
Okay.
But I mean they're neck and neck. Let me rewatch them though, and I could probably see Unbreakable taking over because I think it does have a higher rewatch value.
I wanted to say that because the twist, like a lot of people didn't like this twist because it wasn't as impactful as The Sixth Sense was. But in a way, that helps rewatchability. Like it just adds like another layer to a character rather than completely changing the entire narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think. Excuse me. Also, for just like for comic book fans, it's a movie that really works and hits hard. I think so. I always will really enjoy this.
I got my notes here. I think it's cool that the disease is real. Samuel Jackson's disease is real, kind of mirroring the fact that I like the horrific part of The Sixth Sense where they're looking at the TV. Like that is something that's real. Like someone in Samuel Jackson's shoes, and if could have his mental instability, could do this. Like they could have this disease and they could be obsessed with comic books, only finding salvation in those stories and become a terrorist. Like that could happen. It really could.
It's like,
Obviously,
Kid President.
What was that?
It's like Kid President.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah, I do. It's like the one. Yeah, I do. It's like a YouTube video, right? The Kid President.
Yeah, I mean, he had like a whole channel. I remember watching a few of his videos growing up.
Wait, how is that like Kid President?
He actually has this. Like, he would break his bones all the time. Like, he had this disease.
Oh, I thought you meant like he eventually became president. You know. I don't know. I like the workout scene a lot too.
Yeah.
I think that's a
His
really
bench form is trash.
Oh my gosh. The bench form, the squeaky shoes, like this movie sucks.
Did I not just say I thought this movie was great?
No. But I do think the actor, the kid in this is also really, really good. And he's just someone who really wants to believe in his dad and believe that his dad's a superhero. Like that's such a kid thing to do. And I love the sequence at the end of the movie. There's no dialogue. And he opens up the paper and it's him and his poncho. And he just slides it slides into frame. I remember this. You see the kid's breakfast, and all of a sudden you just see a newspaper come in very slowly. And you look at Bruce Willis and he just looks down. He's like, look at the paper. And then he sees that his dad is on the paper and he's like almost sobbing. And
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is just looking at him with like just mouthing words. He's like, man, you were right. Like you were right. I am like a fucking hero. Like, oh my gosh, man. That is so good.
You asked me my favorite scene in The Sixth Sense. My favorite scene in this was when the kid was holding the gun up to Bruce Willis. That whole sequence.
It's just like I thought we were becoming friends. Like him just saying that, like that's the truth. Like Bruce Willis is trying to be because he was going to divorce his wife. He was going to move away, but then he is trying to build this relationship back up again with his son as well. And John, what's his name? Price, Elijah Price. Samuel L. Jackson allows the relationship of this family to come together. They would be separate if it wasn't for him, which makes the ending like it's not only him becoming a hero, it's him becoming a father again, becoming a husband again. And that makes the ending even more impactful. It's like you've changed this guy's life so much, and then you find that out. Oh, it's just devastating.
Yeah. I also just think like with Elijah, I mean we talked about him a good bit earlier, but just I think comic books and all that stuff, like fantasy stuff, like at its best can often be an escape for people that are like going through a hard time or having some kind of struggle in their life. And I think a lot of people get into that stuff as kids and like it's kind of an escape. So I feel like just having that portrayal of this as at like its most extreme is just really effective. And a lot of people can probably, it works towards the empathetic nature of the performance and the character. So it's really good. I like it a lot. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on it?
I know there's complainers. It's very much valid sometimes about M. Night's dialogue, but I just want to read. I want to read a line. I want to read a line that Samuel Jackson says at the end of this movie to David Dunn. He says, "Now that you know who you are, I know who I am." Chilling, absolutely terrifying. It's so good. That's such a good line to end this movie on. And it's just like the movie needs to have a villain. And that's something that you forget about. This is a superhero movie. That's something that you just because it's not framed like if this was Superman, of course there's going to be a villain. If this is Batman, of course there's going to be a villain. This is Unbreakable. What the hell is Unbreakable? Oh, it's just a dude finding out he's a superhero. That's cool. No, it's a dude who finds out he's a superhero from the villain. And you just forget that and just good movie, man. I think this is the most that I've ever like been just insane about a film that we've talked about. Just so passionate about it.
Yeah, that's good though. I think that's what we ideally want out of a movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
So that's great.
And I remember also not knowing what this movie was. I bought this movie growing up, and I did not know what it was. My brother said, "Hey, I think this is an M. Night Shyamalan movie," and we bought it, and it kind of just blew me away because obviously I watched maybe the Spider-Man films and I don't know, maybe The Dark Knight, and then you watch this film and you're just like, what the fuck? Like you didn't know this was kind of possible that you could like be this real with it. And then to be honest, we're doing M Night, or I'm trying to still get through M Night's filmography. I have not watched Glass.
It's so
Neither
bad.
have I.
Like, I would say literally, if you love Unbreakable this much, like, it might really piss you off to watch. That's how I felt about it. But
That's crazy because I feel like you're the first person I've heard say a negative thing about it.
yeah, I think it's.
I know people don't like it. I know people don't like it.
I've heard people don't like the third one. I forget the name of it. Is that?
Oh, that's Glass. That's what we're talking about. You're talking about Split.
Split. Okay.
Yeah.
In my head, I had him flipped because I've heard great things about Split.
They call me Mr. Glass. Oh, so that.
Yeah, Split is a mixed bag for me, but Glass is just terrible. Like Venom, Let There Be Carnage level money grab. So
I'm so passionate about this movie. I don't know if you're as passionate, but you guys want to tell me, Dan, Connor, why you like The Visit so much? Why you think it's M. Night's best?
Dan, I'll let you start.
I like The Visit because I feel like M. Night is having fun with this movie. I think he's at his best with super simple stuff. The guy does not write incredibly well-woven like narratives, in my opinion. He often has like a lot of holes in the stuff he makes. This is just a simple story that's entertaining. He has that same kind of empathetic connection where everyone in the audience has had grandparents, or most people. Like, we all usually have had some kind of experience with our grandparents as kids. I think we can all kind of relate to what these kids are doing and kind of like the joy of that. And then also like the terrifying nature of something being off about it. I think it's a very like base human experience to work off of. This movie is goofy, but here's the thing, and I always talk about this, it works for the movie because it matches up with everything else that's going on. It's ridiculous. Like, it's a ridiculous movie, but it also manages to be kind of scary and like pretty gripping, I think. And I think you have genuine concern for the situation and the kids, and the twist is little and controlled. It's just like he's under control. He simplified everything. The camera is obviously simple as well. It's just a fun movie, and this is what he does at his best. It's not trying to be super serious, but it's not the lightest thing in the world, and it all just works for me.
Yeah, I'm the bandwagon off that. Tonally, this one feels almost the most consistent because he does such a good job at building up all of the tension. Like, it starts off like just a happy welcome to the grandparents they've never met, to then them playing hide and go seek under the house, which I think is one of the scarier scenes in the whole thing, just the way the grandma moves. Fucking terrifying. What's also really funny about this movie, I've seen it before, and I literally erased it from my memory. I went on a date in high school when I worked at the movie theater because we got free tickets, and she liked horror movies, and I was like, well, I can get us in. I hate horror movies, but I was a senior in high school, so I was like,
yeah, gotta get the
go. Yeah. So I've seen this movie before, and I didn't realize it until that scene where the grandma was chasing them under the house.
Nice.
Taking your head.
Yeah, and now this movie is like burned into my brain.
It's funny. It's like that burned into brain, like when the kid opens the door and just sees his grandma butt ass naked. That's really good. Well, it's funny. I can't remember what you just said, but about the the camera, like the way it's shot, like it's shot.
Like found footage.
That's what I love is I think even more than you guys, I think this movie's fucking hilarious. I don't even think it's that terrifying. I think it's really funny. And it's good humor too. It's not like awkward humor. But I just lost my train of thought. What I really like though is the camera. That's what I'm saying. Cinematography is it's not shot like what you usually see found footage movies are shot like. Like it's kind of still filmed like a movie. That's like what this girl is trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm saying that is I don't think this movie would be as funny if it was shot like a traditional found footage movie, even though it's coming across like that. if you have the exact same script, if you try to like something with a camera, I like that it looks like a movie because it just adds to the awkwardness of everything. It really does. One of my favorite parts of this is I talked to my brother before I jumped on with you guys. And I told him like I like the visit or whatever, and he was more maybe on your guys' side where he's like that stuff's actually like pretty fucking scary, dude. I didn't find it scary. I thought it was hilarious how the kid was freaked out by the fact that his grandpa was shitting his pants. I thought that was so funny. He said, there's the diapers in the barn. I was like, I think I think as a child that would really scare you if you saw your grandpa just doing that. And also sundowners. Like sundowners is a real thing. And even though these people are crazy, I think this person like they're crazy in the daytime, right? They killed the actual grandparents. But when Sundowners is happening, it's actually Sundowners. So stuff like that, just like the grandma running through the hallway and she's like clawing at the thing, like I like that. I think it fits the story really well. It is kids being freaked out about getting old and old people. And like you said, Dan, I don't think the twist is too crazy. Like I think he could have done a lot more and really ruined it, but I think that it's perfect. They work at a psych hospital. Some of the patients broke out. That's it. That's just smart. It's smart. Just calm. Just nice little twist that really works.
Was that even a twist, or was it when Catherine Hahn said, "Those aren't your grandparents"?
Oh, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think like, and I don't think this movie's like terrifying. I just think it's like it's unsettling. Like the kids are unsettled, and you feel that, like, and it works, and it goes with the entire thing just fits together. And like, again, he's just not a very good writer, and this is a simple story, and he just executes everything else in between. So I like it a lot. I think it's a really fun movie. And yeah, this is my favorite of his.
So I have mine too.
I'm glad I remembered it, but the kid's rapper name was T Diamond Stylus. I honestly, like again, I talked to my brother. He thought those kids were fucking annoying. I thought they were pretty funny. I thought the kid was really funny.
Yeah, that's what I like. This movie and like Hitman are similar in a way that like it's not here's a like one liner, laugh at it. It's like kind of built up humor, a lot of it, or like it's just easy humor that most people will laugh at, I think. And that's what I really like about it.
And like there's a weird combination of horror and humor towards the end, like you said, gets built up, is the fact that the kid hates germs and the dude shit in his pants. And then at the end, when he takes his freaking diaper, shoves it in his face, I was like, that was so good. It was so good. I was like, what a great combination of parts of this story.
Well, I also thought it was funny, just like the difference that the like siblings were having. Like the girl is trapped in a room with this grandma who's under the bed, crawling around, like grabbing the sheets, sneaking up behind her in the mirror, and like the kid is just like getting shit rubbed in his face. They're having vastly different nights.
I also like. I do think like. I think the kid's a little cringe. And I think all the rap shit is like it is really cringe, and it's so like. It's like that to me just isn't funny. Like I don't understand what M. Night thinks is funny and doesn't sometimes, but it's still just like it does work for me in the story. But like that's the kind of shit M. Night would have in his other movies and just be like, "What are you doing? Like, why is this here?" It's just so stupid. Like, but I think tonally it works. So
yeah, but at the same time, how much cringe shit did you do when you were 10 years old?
I don't know. I've just blocked most of my life out of my mind, so it never happened.
But I think that's why it works is because like a lot of 10-year-olds, especially I'll say boys, like do a lot of stupid shit.
No, that's completely fair. Yes.
I kind of want to bring signs in this conversation just a little bit. I know we were going to talk about it, but I know a complaint that you have, Dan. What was it?
I said
boo. I'm with him.
I know a complaint that you have is the fact that the children like speak like they're adults. They don't speak like they're kids. I think maybe that is reflected here with the older daughter, but I also think it kind of fits in the visit because she's in a way kind of pretentious. Like she's trying to be an adult, trying to be a great filmmaker, and she speaks like an adult, which I think is just very fitting for her character. But something you said that was interesting when it comes to M. Night and like he doesn't know what is funny. I saw this interview that I thought was very fascinating about signs. it's the fact that he purposely wrote the story to be a little bit more humorous than The Sixth Sense and then Unbreakable. And then he said he went out and got actors and just got really fucking good actors and for dramatic actors and kind of forgot that he wrote a humorous story. And then he said when I think they were like shooting a scene or everything and they were playing it back, like everyone was laughing. And M. Night's like, oh yeah, I forgot. This is kind of fucking funny. I think that's just an insane thing to think about. Like that's literally a quote of an interview from him is that I kind of forgot that I wrote this movie funny and I cast dramatic actors, which makes sense. Like Mel Gibson is funny in that movie, but Mel Gibson's not really like obviously I think M. Night probably was trying to go for somebody who does comedy and drama, but I don't think Mel Gibson really does comedy that often at all. At least at that stage of his career.
Yeah, I mean, he's done like, was it like What Women Want or something? That movie where stuff like he can do that kind of stuff. But yeah, and I mean, like Lethal Weapon is funny, it is tongue in cheek, but
I'll have to find that interview and send it to you.
Yeah, you should make a video about that. That would be a good video because it's part of the obnoxious discourse around him is the shit that he makes that's god awful. Everyone just says, well, he wanted it to be funny. But like half the time it's not even funny. That's the problem. But and then a lot of the rest of the time, like he didn't mean for it to be funny, and you can find interviews with him talking about how serious he thought the movie was he was making. So it's just like it's this permanently built-in cop-out for his like diehard fans to just be like, oh, you just didn't get the joke. It's like, no, it's just a bad movie.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'm glad that we are. So I know a lot of people have been comparing. I know M. Night Shyamalan's dialogue is interesting. I think even people who don't like his films, people who like his films will say that. It is not the norm. And I've seen a lot of people compare the fact that there's other directors that do that as well. And there's some, like I haven't watched a lot of David Lynch movies and other directors that they talk about. But one I will talk about is Yorgos Lanthimos. A lot of people compare the fact that Yorgos Lanthimos' characters don't talk very normal. But I think the difference is Yorgos Lanthimos kind of sets up these worlds where it's the lobster. That's a really ridiculous concept, and the entire movie is centered around that. Obviously, with Poor Things, and even maybe Kinds of Kindness as well, but not as much. As I think, let's just use Trap as like an example. Trap is very much supposed to be set, I think, in our reality. And so is Old, even though Old is about a mysterious beach, right? That's fucking crazy. It's still, what if there was a beach in reality that did this? So I don't think his worlds necessarily reflect his dialogue. And I also think it's unfair for people who are fans of him to be like, everyone needs to get over the fact that this is how his dialogue is written. Because I think as a director, it is your job to make a movie like Yorgos Lanthimos has eventually, like, even Killing of a Sacred Deer was one of his earliest movies. Out of The Lobster and Poor Things, that was probably the most grounded in reality, but it warmed people up to it. I think that it's very interesting that M. Night has not in some way tried to fix the problem, even if he is doing it on purpose. Like, I think he is trying to make broad. I respect the guy. I respect the guy a lot. The fact that he made an original movie that his name is just slapped onto, that doesn't have a huge star, that opened up as big as he did, that's insane. That's insane when your filmography is like 50-50. It's really impressive. And
That's generous.
Well, the thing is cool that's also with talking about The Visit is he's just self-financing. Ever since The Visit, after the misses with The Last Airbender and the misses with After Earth, he finances all of his films. He financed this movie. He financed Split, Glass, Old, and also The Servant on Apple TV. But it's the fact that it's interesting for people to say like, hey, you need to get used to this because nobody wants to revisit his films that have this dialogue problem because it's more than just the dialogue. It's other parts of the story as well. And yes, maybe people who have watched a lot of his filmography, they do get used to it and they do enjoy it. But the majority of people are not going to revisit movies that they already have a bad taste in their mouth for. Like The Happening. I think that was where his dialogue was ramped up to 150. And people are like, what the fuck is going on here? And they don't want to revisit it, even if they adapt to the way that the characters speak and the lines are written. It's just nobody wants to go back to it. They have no need to or no want to. And I think it's interesting. I even sent this. I know I'm going on a little tangent here, but I even messaged this out on Twitter with like my 100 followers that I have, and nobody could really respond, or nobody responded, which I'm disappointed about. I would love to see an interview. I wonder if there's an interview out there where M. Night talks about the way he writes his dialogue. Is it something that his fans have conjured up? Like, this is how he writes it, right? And get used to it. Or is it actually a mistake? Like, if I was him, right? And for years and years and years, people have just criticized the way my scripts are. I would come out and say, hey, this is how I write movies, just to fix up something. This is what I think how the characters need to interact, how what they're doing applies to the story, and what I'm really trying to do here. I wonder if that exists. I really do, because I would love to hear it from him rather than people who are opposed to any criticism towards his films.
Yeah, it's just like it's just in bad faith from some of his fans. Like, and something I said when I talked about Trap today is like these people, a lot of the people that like will ride or die from him like exist in echo chambers where the only people they interact with are those that have the same exact opinion as them, which is dangerous in any walk of life, for sure. And generally creates like fairly obnoxious people. But what I would say is M. Night needs to understand, and his fans need to understand, he's not just making movies for them, right? Like, Trap's not marketed as a comedy, is it? Trap's marketed as a psychological thriller. It's marketed as some horror, a crime story. It's marketed as a mystery. There's no comedy in it. So when you're selling it to people, and people are spending their hard-earned money to go watch a serious story, and you give them either a terrible movie that's an unintentional comedy or a purposeful comedy, regardless, you're wasting their time. And that's my issue with him. And that's my issue with a lot of his fans is like, it's just this like self-absorbed, well, this is what I wanted and I have to defend this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, regardless of what the average person who went into that movie and doesn't understand what the fuck they saw, regardless of M. Night's intentions, it's going to be disappointing to a lot of people. And regardless of how much money he makes, I don't care. But that's just kind of how I look at it.
I think people are just more vocal because I think there's a lot of people who think that people hate M. Night Shyamalan, and that's not the case in my opinion. Like, if you look at Letterboxd, a lot of his movies are right down the middle. It's 2.9, 3, 3.1, 2.8. Like, it's pretty. It's not like ones, I mean, After Earth and The Happening, but that's about it. Is I think people are more vocal about their disappointment because they, like you said, Dan, from the beginning of his career and even the ideas he presents, they see the potential. Like, this could be something incredible. Like, but it just doesn't get there for him, so it hurts more. It really does.
That's how I felt when I watched Signs. Like, the concept of it all, very cool. I think the execution was just poor.
Yeah.
I will say, when you talk about comedy, do you guys? There's one sequence or one line of the visit that I think is intentionally funny. I don't know if it horrified you guys, but I texted you guys it. It's when the Sundowners is like setting in on the grandma, and she starts like eating cookies. She's like, and then she like looks at the camera and she goes, Yahtzee! Just like screams at the camera. I died laughing. I thought that was the funniest thing.
Now, you wrote down a quote earlier. I wrote down what I thought was the funniest line in the movie, and it was, I have the deep darkies. You have to laugh to hide the deep darkies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very funny movie, and like that was the intention, and that's why I like it. Like, it's pretty simple stuff.
I think it's a good blend of humor and also a little bit of horror because the stakes are really never that high. Like, maybe at the end you're like, what are these grandparents going to do to these kids? But they never have them in a situation where they're really about to kill them. I don't think. It's just like,
I mean, the grandpa attacks him in the kitchen. I think it feels pretty intense.
Yeah.
Well, I think it could have been more serious. Imagine if it went a step further and they had him like locked down in the basement and had him all chained up. I think that would have been too far. I think it goes just enough that it doesn't go too far away from the comedy. Like
But
there
putting
is
her in
that.
the oven was okay.
What was that?
But putting her in the oven was okay.
I thought that was a good misdirect. This is my first time watching the movie, and I thought she was just gonna like keep her in there, but she's just like, I'm just goofing around. Come on back out here. It's like, oh, okay. That was good. It's a solid movie. It really is.
Do you guys have any last thoughts on The Visit?
Underrated. I honestly would recommend this movie to a lot of people. I really would. I think this is more broad appeal than I would recommend people Unbreakable, even though I think that movie's underrated. I think this is good comedy. It's good, a good unique story with a good twist. Like I said, I think the cinematography is kind of perfect and not only enhancing the humor but also the scares as well. Because found footage is just sometimes it gets really fucking annoying, and I'm glad this didn't take the original route when it comes to found footage. But also, we didn't speak about it. But what do you guys think of like Catherine Hahn's? I guess
yeah, I want to
dynamic.
talk about that. I want to see her in kind of more dramatic pieces. I know she's done them. I just haven't seen them. And most of what I have seen Catherine Hahn in is like very dumb comedies, like Bad Moms and stuff like that. So I thought she was good in this for the short period she was in it, especially at the end when like she showed up with the cops. Like that felt very real and raw. Like her reaction as a mother. Also, my final thought on this: this is the only movie we're talking about today that I gave a 5 out of 5.
Damn.
Love
that.
Jeez, you really like this movie.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even like. In terms of how I give fives, I don't even hate that at all. Like, there's nothing. I wouldn't change anything about it. I think it does exactly what it wants to do. So, yeah. I have it high. I want to say 4.5. I have to check, but I really like it.
I will say another thing about her character that fits the dialogue is I feel like she's a very socially awkward, weird single mom. Like she's out there dating again. And just the way, like, she's a goofy mom on a cruise ship trying to talk to her kids. And the dialogue, the way that they're talking to each other feels kind of off. But that works not only because of their relationship, but also because they're talking through like a Zoom call. And I think because she does do, like you said, she does a lot of comedies. I think she really fits this character really well. That is something also I've noticed about M. Night's movies, maybe not towards the earlier part of his career, but the late. I like that he uses a lot of different actors. Like I like that Josh Hartnett is the star of Trap. I think that's really cool. Everyone in Old is new. I mean, you have Glass, but even Knock at the Cabin, Dave Bautista is the best part of that film. I like when a director just uses different people. But yeah, but Catherine Hahn, like I said, I agree. I would love to see her more in dramatic roles. Hopefully, Agatha All Along looks pretty decent. I'm glad you said something, Dan. Hey, Agatha All Along doesn't look that bad.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Ready to get trapped?
Yeah. Jesus. What did you give this, Stone, rating-wise?
So I'm a little bit torn. So I've spoken about my brother too much, but like when I talk about movies, it's you guys and my brother. My brother hated this movie. He gave it a 1 out of 5. I will say that something that really hurts this movie a lot is I think that the sequences in the stadium would have been a lot better if we didn't see them in the trailers. There's really nothing that we didn't see in the trailers that didn't happen in the stadium. The only thing that happens is the daughter goes on stage. That's about it. But I mean, you see him talk to I didn't think this guy gave a good performance. So the guy who sold T-shirts, and then you see him explode those things in the fryer in the girl's face, and you see him steal the walkie-talkie. But I feel like this. I even said in my review, I feel like this setting was wasted. I feel like there's so much you could do. And one thing I want to point out is a lot of our mutuals have said this too. Is CinemaSins. I've seen a lot of people say that has ruined movies. Is the fact of pointing out plot holes, things that wouldn't happen in a film in real life, but it's a movie, right? It's make believe. You can do whatever you want. And I talked about some of the issues that I had when it came to stuff at the concert, and you did as well. But I think why these plot holes are so important to note when it comes to Trap is because the reason why this movie was so interesting to so many people was wondering how the hell does this serial killer get out of a concert? And when your narrative does not treat a concert like a concert, it brings down that excitement. Like it's a lazy script if you're just like, man, I can make up whatever the fuck I want to about this place. It's way more interesting if you take this idea and place it in reality and actually figure out how this guy would get out rather than what was created.
Yeah, and I think like that exact lazy, like, I call it laziness. I think he's a lazy writer. I think he just gets an idea and is like, that's cool, and then just kind of pushes ahead with it. And then I guess he has a couple cool shots here and there, and people are like, oh, it's a masterpiece. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't quite understand. Like, this is a cool premise, and I talked for 3.5 minutes in my review. I didn't touch the plot because it's not worth touching the plot. Because like I could sit there for 10 minutes and tell you why this movie is so goddamn stupid and poorly written. Like the plot is a nothing, and like I think it's almost impossible to talk about the movie and even dive into it because it's just you'll get lost in talking about the problems. And I've seen a lot of people say this feels like a video game. Like the conversations kind of feel like video game cutscenes, and it's just like.
And they find that interesting. It's very like they're like, dude, it's like Hitman. That's so cool. But the thing about Hitman, it's not the cutscenes that are interesting. It's the gameplay. You aren't playing this game. Cutscenes aren't necessarily, and it's not even that interesting. It's just he like blows by the police and grabs a walkie-talkie. And like, I don't necessarily understand what he's trying to do. I guess he's trying to gauge like where these guys are. But it's still like you see him in the trailers, and the dude's just kind of walking around and just looking everywhere. But it's just he's just constantly staring at everything. And like you said, I think it would have been really interesting if other people in the crowd were fucking noticing these police and there was more of a commotion and you treat this like reality. Like that would have been more interesting. Like he's not the only person seeing these police. The guy who sells t-shirts isn't the only person at this stadium who has been told about this. Like there's missed potential.
Yeah, and it really could have been something interesting in my opinion. And again, I just think that misdirect would have been so cool. It would have been it's an easy, and some people might have predicted it, but like it's still a cool, easy twist, and it would have given Hartnett just more flexibility with his performance. But to do that, you would have had him have to talk like a normal fucking human being and actually feel like he was a dad and like knew his daughter at all, and they're not just two aliens sitting there. But also just like I'm talking about the plot, but like this dude gets out of his chair like 7 times. Like they're all being watched, right? He's just literally wandering around like staring at stuff in the hallways. He would have been on video pushing a lady down the steps. They would have just looked at the video. Like there's police right there. He just walks behind the counter at the fast food place and just puts jars of oil or whatever that is in the fryer, and no one sees. Like, what are we do? Like, I just can't take you seriously unless it's all just a big joke. In which case, like, okay, but I just don't take you seriously as a writer. I'm sorry. Like, it's terrible.
I do agree. Like you said, the conversations. I think there is something interesting here, similar to After Earth, where it's Will Smith and Jaden Smith. M. Night is directing. He's in the movie, and then you have his daughter. And I think obviously everyone's like, this is a message about or a story about a father and a daughter and disappointing your daughter because of your passion for work. I think that is really interesting. And I also think that it's interesting, or that M. Night's dialogue fits when it comes to Josh Hartnett's character when he's like interacting with people who aren't his daughter. It's weird, it's awkward, it's not normal. And the way it's like the sequences and the way they're timed, it's just you know something's off. But when that same person is talking to his daughter that way, then you don't get the connection that I think M. Night was hoping for. I didn't feel like you said, I didn't feel, they feel like aliens. Like there's no real chemistry between the dad and the daughter. And I see what he was trying to do, especially towards the end, of disappointing his daughter, disappointing his family. But I don't think this the connection was set up well. I really don't.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, and I don't think the daughter did a very good job performance-wise. This might be I don't think Hartnett was great, honestly, for a large portion of the movie.
You liked him towards the end, right?
Yeah, like he had some moments here and there, but like very generic serial killer stuff, like pretty generic stuff. I'm going to be completely real. It's something I haven't seen before. Like he's not reinventing the wheel. Like what? He's just unhinged. Okay. Like what am I seeing there that I haven't seen before?
I saw an interesting argument where I think that his motivations behind doing this are very much shallow. And I saw someone say the fact that that very much fits a serial killer. Like he was born this way, right? This is just what he does. And I like that. I like if they didn't necessarily give an explanation as to why he does this stuff. It's just part of who he is. But the thing that goes against that is because they drop little nuggets for you of his mom, and he sees his mom in the arena, and it's supposed to be played up as this big thing. And then, like, I wish that was not in the movie at all. I wish he wasn't seeing his mom. And like, they try to make something out of it at the very end, and it's a letdown. It's a letdown. Oh, you were just a crazy boy. That's it. I was like, okay, but like you have these expectations that I guess it's a good subverting expectations, but I just wish that wasn't in there at all, you know?
Yeah. And how did you feel about Suleika?
Terrible. I was
Like
waiting, I was waiting for you to say
unwatchably
that.
bad. And I just don't, again, I just don't quite understand how you brush that aside. It's nearly half the movie. She's like a co-lead.
I think everyone except diehard fans of his kind of think the same thing too. I've seen people who have been openly critical about the movie but still enjoyed it said I don't like this is her first movie. And I get that you want to help out her career. Like you said, I think that's cool. You've been given the platform to do this. You can do whatever you want. This is your movie. It's funny. I think you said that her music sounds like elevator music. And it's funny because I remember after I watched this, I drove home and I had it like I wasn't paying attention to it. I think I was talking to no, I wasn't talking to anybody, but I wasn't necessarily paying attention to it. I was paying attention to the road. I was like, yeah, this is fine, casual music, and that's exactly what it is. It's elevator music.
It's background music for the first half of the movie, which is exactly what it serves as. And like I've seen people talk about like how this is shot, this and that. I think what they did with visually was fucking boring. You're at a concert. It was a lot of this like en face, like straight on angle to on the stage, just like the same shots over and over again with like fairly basic choreography. Like, what are we doing there? Like, there's nothing inventive going on when you're at a event like that. Like, you can really play with the camera and get inventive. Like, I strongly disagree with that being a strength of the movie. Like, I don't understand.
I think there's a lot of missed potential, and then also my favorite shot of the movie was there's a sequence with Hartnett's in the bottom right of the frame, and then you have the gigantic screen that Seleka's performing on. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, show. I don't know, I just like the sizing, right? I like how small he looks. But then they showed that like 5 or 6 times, and I was like, okay, well, it's not a special anymore if you show that shot over and over and over again.
Yeah, they didn't have much else in the bag to really go to. So,
and it's just an insane thing for me that M. Night wrote this movie for his daughter, knowing, and it's cool, and I'm glad he's promoting her career. I thought Kid Cudi was funny in 3 seconds. I thought he was funny. But is the fact that you knew that you were going to have your daughter, who's never acted before, act in this film. And you didn't know how she was going to do. You really didn't. And you're just like, hey, this movie's going to be for you. It's going to showcase your music. You're also going to act a bit at the end. I know you haven't acted before, but you can do it, kid. It's just like, I feel like you can do both. Like, this script could have been written in a way to promote her music, but then also not have her be such a main character at the end. Maybe it wouldn't have been as interesting. I don't think that part of the movie was interesting anyways. But I just can't fathom the fact that not only are you going to do the promoter music, but then also, like, I feel like put that on your daughter, like you said, like Jaden Smith and Will Smith. Like, this movie is significantly worse because she's acting so much in it. and even you said you didn't like Josh Hartnett's performance, and that's fine. But I think even you might agree that when him and her are talking to each other, it just doesn't even compare. Like she just seems like it's just abnormal for her to be there.
She's not an actor.
No,
like,
she's not.
I honestly think you're downplaying it a little. Like she's not just like sprinkled into the end of the movie. She is really a focal point of half the movie.
Yep.
So like it's bad, man. Like and again, he's doing her a disservice by doing that. And I'm just being blunt. I'm not going to dance around it. It's just she's awful. So
yeah, I don't understand the mindset where it's like I don't fucking care if this hurts my movie. I want to promote her music. I think you could have done both. You really could have. And I also didn't like there's a sequence that I really didn't like. Like I said, elevator music, it's fine. But I did not like the fact that there's that sequence at the end where she sits down on the piano and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna play the song for you." And it was the most recorded in the studio audio or music I've ever heard of her just playing on this piano. I was like, okay, you can sing, but obviously you can't sing that well if you're not just singing normally right now.
yeah. But yeah, I gave this a 1.5, and like I think that's generous. Like there's so little. The one positive I did mention is like, and this something is, it's not a small thing thematically. I did think it was interesting, and the one thing that I think could make some of this make sense is, I think it's a little bit of a movie about like white privilege, to be honest, and just like how people that look like us can kind of just like get through situations, not get looked at by the police, not get looked at as suspicious, and just kind of make our way through life pretty easily. And I think from a plot standpoint, it makes some of the ridiculousness and some of the plot holes a little bit funny, because it's like he just makes his way through because he's like kind of charming and he's a good looking guy, and like it's just whatever. But
so was Ted Bundy.
I mean, sure, like thematically, like it's the same thing where and there's a lot of guys like that throughout history that have kind of hidden in plain sight. And what's his face, Wayne Gacy. He met like the first lady and shook her hand and was like a big part of the community, and like just kind of was doing his thing in the open, and no one looked at him. So it is kind of interesting from that perspective, and I like that, but you got to give me something else. But I think there was, again, something meaningful at the core there, and I almost wish it just went like fully lean into that, be ridiculous, like be a comedy about that, and that would have been awesome. But
I also love the fact that these cops had a plan, and their plan was to just check every single dude at this concert. They're like, we don't really know what he looks like, but we know he's a man, so we're just gonna.
No, but dude, the only reason he couldn't have just left is because they had a piece of intel that said he had a tiny tattoo on his wrist. Where the fuck did that come from? Who saw that? Like
cameras, I don't know.
So the camera saw the small tattoo on the inside of his wrist and doesn't know what he looks like? What are we doing? It's just so stupid. And this is the stuff I like can't even start talking about because my head will explode. But like it's so fucking stupid.
I don't know. A lot of people are talking about the fact that there's this world, right? It's a make believe movie, but people are like, I mean, a physical ticket. Like he's a serial killer who's supposed to be smart, and he didn't buy an online ticket. He just bought a ticket stub or left his receipt somewhere. I mean, obviously it wasn't him, but.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting as well how there's a big emphasis on the wife at the very end, and she really wasn't talked about a lot in the film, and all of a sudden at the very end she becomes this big character.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't you lead up to this more? Honestly, I thought it was going to be the police chief or that teacher, whoever that was, and she's just nothing. She's nothing. They build her up as this huge person, and even Josh Hartnett seems scared of her. He's like, oh shit, she's here, gotta go, And she's nothing. There's nothing there.
Yeah. It's just so half-baked. And like honestly, I mentioned this, but this feels like we didn't even talk about like he's having these side conversations with that like neighbor or whatever, or like woman from his school. Like, why the fuck is she in the movie? Can you tell me? Like that is the most filler bullshit, and she was awful as well. She was horrendous. Like pulls
The
you
only
out
thing
of the movie, slows the story down to a complete like grinds it to a halt. There's so much filler here, and this feels like a short. Like this feels like it should have been 45 minutes, if that. And like it's just a lot of BS, and it's a boring movie to me too. Like there's a lot of nothing happening. Like I was bored to tears. Honestly,
the only thing I the only thing I could think of when it comes to that lady is it gives more context as to how he really feels about his daughter. Like her children did hurt his daughter wrong, and he even says that he's like, I don't fucking like that you did that or they did that. That hurt her feelings, something like that. So I think that's the reason why she's in the story. But there's also for unnecessary reason that jarring like pan over to her when the daughter's up on the stage and all of a sudden we see her with her kids in the crowd and her daughter just throws a fucking fit because she's on stage. I was like, okay, you didn't even give them that much screen time. I wasn't that invested in them.
yeah, it was just too much in my opinion. But I
It's
don't
just
know, man.
interesting. Man. I mean, I had a person walk out of my movie theater towards the end, honestly, which is insane. I've never really said that about a movie this year. I don't know if I've seen that movie this year. Maybe it wasn't as obvious to me, but this guy was just sitting in front of me and like the climax is happening. And he didn't walk out of the theater. He got up and kind of just sat near the aisle or like stood in the aisle. And he's like, I don't know if I really want to stay or not, is how I kind of gauged it. But yeah, divisive as always, right down the middle as always when it comes to M. Night's movies. Not surprised, even though we were hoping for a surprise.
Where do you
Yep.
guys rank this in his films?
I don't rate it horribly. I like I said, I think earlier in the this episode, I like it when he has weird ideas. Like I like Lady in the Water a little bit because it's very, very weird. Even The Village, but this is just set maybe more than any of his films so much in reality, in the fact that I feel like he doesn't take a lot of creative risks. It's just not as like I would put this under The Village. I would put it under Lady in the Water. Um, I'd probably put it above After Earth, even though I did like After Earth a little bit, but it's just a little like middle towards the bottom. I mean, I still have to watch Glass and Old. Those are the only movies I haven't watched by
Oh God.
him.
Yeah, it's near the bottom for me. Like it's just with the other stuff that I think is dog shit. Kind of difficult to differentiate. It's a little better than like it's better than like Avatar.
I figured that much.
Maybe a tiny bit better than like After Earth, but it's
That's
just
the happening.
a little bit better. Maybe like half star. But
I think we have it like the same. I would put it above those two.
yeah, man, it's kind of just a waste of time, like a nothing movie for me. So I'm never gonna watch this again.
Dan, when it comes to M. Night, do you have more rated above 3 stars or below 3 stars?
Below.
Stone?
I don't know. Probably right down the middle. Like I said, I feel like all of his films are right down the like I like The Village more than you guys. Like I think that kind of similar to Lady in the Water, it didn't know how to set up its story. It really didn't. It kind of just goes into it. But I think that the relationship between Bryce Dallas Howard and Joaquin Phoenix is pretty good. I also think the cinematography is really good. I like the twist. I like the colors, but like I have Lady in the Water at a 2.5. I have Trap at 2.5. I have what else do I have at 2.5? After Earth, which I might put that down.
Brother.
But I'll probably put that down as a 2. But oh yeah, The Visit though 3.5. Pretty good, pretty solid movie.
3.5?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good, entertaining movie with a good twist. It didn't blow my mind. I would honestly probably put The Village above The Visit, just because I like the atmosphere and the size that the story is trying to go for in a way.
That's fair. Yeah, just really not my favorite director. But
Like I said, I still do think
like.
it's impressive after all of his misses that people are still going to watch this movie. I'm like, man, like even though like Spielberg, Tarantino, Scorsese, like I think obviously these guys maybe have a lot more better films when it comes to the size of their filmography. M. Night still just knows how to. People are just so intrigued by him. They really are.
Yeah, I think people like want to support him, you know, since he self finances and kind of does his own thing. But you got to make good movies too, in my opinion.
All right, Connor, will you be watching Trap when it comes to streaming?
I'll probably check it out.
Nice.
Just watch the first half and turn it off.
So it kind of sounds like we're wrapping up on the Trap talk. We didn't talk Signs, but Stone, I know you're not as big into sports as Dan and I are. Dan, there was a line in Signs that I want to talk about with specifically you, where Joaquin is in the recruiter's office and they're talking about his time in minor league baseball. And the guy behind him chimes in and he's like, yeah, it didn't matter where the ball was thrown. He would just swing at it. And I was just like, it's Javi Baez.
Yeah, man. The downfall of Javi Baez has been absolutely preposterous.
It's insane.
Yeah. He very interesting career. That would be a long conversation. But yes.
Speaking of Signs, that sequence, I like the guy in the recruiting office, how he like looks like this. He's just talking to him like this. The dude is sitting at the desk. One thing I did want to say about Signs, though, I know I had all these notes written down. I like it when Joaquin Phoenix says, "Move, children, vamonos." I think that's really funny.
Joaquin was cracking me up the whole movie. But
Joaquin's pretty funny. Yeah, move, children, vamonos.
I don't know. I just thought of the Javi Baez thing, and I wanted to tell Dan.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Spot on.
All right, did you guys come up with any recommendations this week for anybody? Or
I had two.
I got two recommendations.
So one, I posted a TikTok about earlier this year. A release from last year that I think was highly underappreciated. Channing Tatum's Dog.
Oh, that was last year?
Yeah.
Was it? That might have been 22.
I think
Verify for me. I think it's 23. But no, I think it was very like under the rug, underappreciated. I think it's one of my favorite Channing Tatum roles. He does it very well. The movie does a good job of balancing comedy and like serious drama. It's a very predictable plot. I mean, when you break it down, because for those who don't know what it's about, it's Channing Tatum was an Army Ranger. He had to get out for medical reasons. He's looking for any way to get back in. And his old commanding officer tells him that if he returns this Belgian Malinois, which was a ranger with him, bring the Belgian Malinois to his handler's funeral, that he can get back in and he will sign the paperwork for him to get back in. And it's just a long journey. You see these two very alpha personalities clashing and they have to work through their differences. And there's like one scene that I do actually think gets kind of ruined a little bit by what they did in the movie. But it kind of hints at like the dogs will have PTSD too. And Channing Tatum doesn't have a lot of money and he's pretending to be a blind veteran with this service dog to get kind of a free room in a hotel. And they're going to go out for the night. And the dog sees a Muslim man and like goes up and attacks him. And that could be like a very intense, serious moment that could be handled and like actually talked about in the movie. But immediately after they make a joke, like Channing Tatum's glasses come off. He's like, my vision's cured. That's like my big complaint about the movie. But I still think it's well worth the watch. They handle PTSD very well. And a lot of the ways they talk in the movie are very accurate to military personnel.
Okay.
My second recommendation is actually going to be a series on Apple TV. Just released, Presumed Innocent. I'm 2 episodes. Yep. Jake Gyllenhaal's new show. I'm only 2 episodes in. I'm really enjoying it outside of the fact that it is Gyllenhaal. For those who don't know what it's about, Jake Gyllenhaal is, a lawyer, and another lawyer on their like team or a colleague of his gets murdered, and he is the lawyer assigned to the case. And then it comes to fruition. He's married with a family. It comes to fruition that he was actually cheating on his wife with this other lawyer that was murdered. And then now he's actually become suspect number one.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard good things about this show.
I'm enjoying it a lot so far.
Stone, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll recommend Lock, which is an A24 film starring Tom Hardy. It's a one location film. It's basically just him driving down the road, basically going to meet not his baby mama, but he had an affair with a woman, and he's trying to not be like his father and be an asshole of a man, and he's trying to take responsibility for what he has done. And even though he doesn't necessarily care for this woman, and he still loves his wife and he still loves his children, he's not going to let this baby grow up without a father. So basically it's just him making calls to his work, to his wife, to his kids, and to this woman, just trying to put the pieces of his life somehow back together. And it's really good. I mean, I just really love one location films a lot. Tom Hardy's a phenomenal actor. The dialogue is super strong just to keep you engaged for the entire time, not doing anything special with the story in a way. Yeah, I think I don't want to spoil it too much. There is an interesting aspect of it when it comes to his car, in a way, something he sees in his car. But yeah, I think it's super solid. I think it's on Max right now to stream. So, because Max has all the A24 films. So, but yeah, really, really solid. One of my favorite A24 films. It's a great performance from Tom Hardy. Gives him, I think people just know he's a leading man. And even in the Bike Riders, I think that he was just underutilized, to be honest. I think, and he might be past his prime in a weird way too. I don't know. I feel like people are giving up on him somehow. Like I feel like he should lead a lot more movies than he does. I feel like people just gave up on the Bike Riders in general. But
I don't know if people are giving up on Tom Hardy or if Tom Hardy just like he's on a lot of side quests of his own.
How so?
Like he just won a Brazilian jiu-jitsu competition. Like he loves doing that in his spare time, and he also talks about all the time how he likes just hanging out at his house, like kind of by himself, and it's just peaceful. So I think that's kind of the route he takes, rather than the other actors, not all of them obviously, that are just always out walking in LA, Hollywood, like everywhere people see them. So I think it might just be Tom Hardy choosing peace over working all the time.
Yeah, I think Tom's also a guy that when he does act, he takes it really seriously. So he probably doesn't want to like burn himself out. I mean, you're laughing, Stone, but like by most accounts, he's like very, very intense on set and like very, very intense with most of his roles. So
I was just thinking of Venom 3. Sorry, I was like, what is Tom Hardy doing nowadays? And I was like, oh wait, he does have a movie where he is the leading man coming up really soon.
yeah, I mean, I think he definitely like got attached to the franchise money there, so he'll see that out. But
I don't blame him.
I thought he was kind of perfectly using the Bike Riders. I think the Bike Riders is like one of the most disrespected movies of the year. I think it's really, really good. I gave it like a 4.5. But yeah, I love Tom Hardy. My movie I talked about earlier this week, but have you guys seen Galaxy Quest?
Yeah, no, I've been meaning to. I need to.
It's 25 years ago that was made, which is so wild. That was like a huge part of my childhood. And it's like it's genuinely just like a near perfect movie. Like it's a parody, but it still tells like such a good, compelling little story. And there's a good villain. Like the aliens they find are hilarious and so strange. And there's just so many good actors like Alan Rickman, Sigourney Weaver, Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell, Justin Long is in it. It's just stacked, and everyone is so funny, and like it's just a really. And I don't love Tim Allen, but he's good in it as like kind of like a Kirk, and it's on Fubo, MGM Plus, Paramount Plus, or you can just rent it. But it's worth a couple dollars. It's a really funny movie, but also has a lot of heart and entertainment and wit and good action. It's just a good, solid movie that is very deserving of all the love it gets.
There you go. There's our recommendations for this week. I recommend everyone going to check out Trap. It's right down the middle. You might like it. You might not like it. Some people find it funny. Some people find it boring. But yeah, come back next week though. We're excited for next week's episode. We're doing Damien Chazelle, one of the best filmmakers working, who's doing a musical in the prison, I think, for his next film. I know he was kind of put in director's jail for Babylon, but we'll probably talk about that when we talk about it next week.
Babylon.
Yeah, but that's our talk on M. Night Shyamalan today. Appreciate everyone listening to us talk about our favorite things in the world of movies. But please, this week, go out and touch some grass, sit on a park bench, and we'll see you next Monday. Peace.